So, yeah, they like questions. So in his first 3 weeks in office, Donald Trump has waged a scorched earth campaign against the rule of law. Yesterday, at least 5 rulings were handed down in federal court against the president's brazen conduct in office, including his attempts to freeze trillions of dollars in federal funding at OMB and his heartless decision to cut billions in medical research through NIH, cutting NIH. Included in his lawful attempts to hollow out the government as well. Listen, these are temporary and a mere step in a long process that must play out. But so far, the courts, the overwhelming majority of courts, have put a hold on Donald Trump's illegal actions. And of course, then we'll go forward and see the debate on the merits. But we're optimistic about winning those as well, because the law is so much on our side. The trend is clear. Donald Trump cannot bulldoze his way through the rule of law. That's what the courts in America are saying. Donald Trump isn't allowed to break the law to achieve those goals. That's not how America works, and my Republican colleagues should not sit idly by while he does it. Now, in 5 weeks, funding for the federal government will run out. Let's remember that when there's talk about a Republican shutdown, President Trump and Republicans are already shutting down large chunks of the government. Democrats do not want to shut the government down, but the Republicans are in charge, and they should fund the government. Since the inauguration, President Trump and Republicans have been actively working to shut down the government entirely on their own. CHCs, research institutions, export for farmers, protections for Americans. Nobody's working harder right now to shut down the government than Donald Trump and congressional Republicans. On nominees, I'm going to turn to my 2 colleagues to say the bulk of it since we're running a little late. But this week, Senate Republicans are working to force 2 wildly unqualified and deeply disturbing nominees through the Senate that they know perfectly well do not merit confirmation. You look at some of their faces when you hear the discussion about this, and you can see they know it's wrong. Last night, 52 Republicans, unfortunately, voted to advance the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard for DNI. It's no secret that she's deeply unqualified to lead America's intelligence agencies. The DNI needs to be conversant and believe in facts and fluent in the truth above all. Intelligence is, by its own definition, a fact-gathering agency. It depends on facts. But Gabbard repeatedly speaks in language of falsity and conspiracy theories and holds deeply troubling ties to our adversaries. She does not deserve to be in that position. If you love your country, believe that our national security should be paramount for the head of national security agencies, you cannot in good conscience vote for Tulsi Gabbard, full stop. After that, we'll move right to another deeply unqualified nominee, Robert Kennedy Jr. for HHS Secretary, to state the incredibly obvious. Putting a very wealthy vaccine skeptic and conspiracy theorist in charge of America's public health would put every single American in danger. Kennedy is not a doctor, he's not a scientist, he's not a public health expert. The only thing he's an expert in is peddling conspiracies and profiting off his own lies. The vote on RFK is one simple question. Will Republicans stand up for what they know is right? Will they stand up to protect your family, and particularly your children and grandchildren? Will they make sure the health of your family is paramount? Or will they put a well-known mockery run into the United States, or will they put on a well-known mockery run for the United States health system? The American people are going to know the answer soon. Senator Murray.
Well, thank you, Mr. Leader. We have a funding deadline fast approaching, and we need a top line very soon to be able to write and pass our bills. I remain at the table with my Democratic counterpart in the House to get a result so we can move forward. But it is extremely difficult to land an agreement on top lines, much less our annual bills, when you have a president and an unelected billionaire ignoring the very agreements we pass each year in our spending bills. What we're seeing now, the absolute lawlessness, the illegal funding freeze that is risking jobs and hurting working people, that simply cannot continue. The President is illegally blocking hundreds of billions in approved funding for our roads and bridges, for clean energy jobs, foreign assistance, and a lot more. What's more, the problem right now is that it's not even March 14th yet, and Trump and Elon Musk are effectively shutting down the government now. Whatever parts they don't like, all on their own, without any regard for the law or the Constitution or Congress. No one voted for the President to illegally block funding from Head Start classrooms or our rural health centers, but that is what Trump did in his second week in office. No one voted to let an unelected billionaire decide what bills the federal government would or would not pay, but Trump is giving Elon the keys to the Treasury. In case Elon needs a reminder, the power of the purse sits with Congress, and that means when people vote for us, we are their voice in how their tax dollars get spent. The Constitution does not say Elon gets to decide if our elementary schools and hospitals get funding. Congress negotiates how we invest in our communities. So this has got to change, and we need our Republican colleagues to work with us to make sure it does. And I hope that we can resolve things in time to pass the full-year funding bills that I actually wanted to finish last December. Now, as we consider nominations on the floor this week, I want to just remind all of you, it was only 2019 when I co-led a bipartisan Senate Health Committee hearing with Senator Alexander to educate people on vaccines, with nearly every Republican senator on that dais making very clear that vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they are life-saving. Now Donald Trump and Elon Musk's Republican Party is on the verge of confirming as our nation's highest health official, RFK Jr., a man who has spent years crusading against vaccines. Republicans are choosing to pretend it like it is in any way believable that RFK Jr. won't use his new power to do exactly the thing he's been trying to do for decades, undermine our vaccines. People are alarmed. My phones are ringing off the hook with constituents who understand the stakes here and want us to stand for science and for their health and safety. Because the health secretary has real power over whether Americans can get the basic information and care they need. I think most of my colleagues know what is at stake here. They know what sort of agenda RFK Jr. will pursue, and they know what sort of damage he could do if he's confirmed. There are political realities, we all get that, but there's also right and wrong, and there's also fact and fiction. There's also people staying healthy and people dying pointlessly, kids dying pointlessly from diseases that we can prevent. So I urge my colleagues to show some courage, show some conscience, and say no to a vaccine denier. He should not be our highest-ranking healthcare official.
Senator Warner.
Thank you. I agree with both my colleagues. Yesterday, Senate Democrats unanimously voted to oppose the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to be the Director of National Intelligence. Because I'm not sure everybody understands how important this job is. The DNI controls 18 different intelligence agencies. Combining the MIP and the NIP, it has $100 billion of spend. The truth is, the stakes on this job have become even more crucial in recent days. Just in the past couple of weeks, President Trump has issued several directives that could irreparably harm our intelligence efforts and our nation's ability to defend itself against a conflict. At the FBI, some of our most experienced agents, some who protected us for decades from terrorists, drug traffickers, spies, violent criminals have all been unceremoniously fired. Across the IC, some of our best espionage people, some of our best cyber hackers are being pressured to resign or retire. You cannot get rid of a senior intelligence official and put a 21-year-old coder in to take their place. Matter of fact, senior law enforcement and national security officers are being asked to take political litmus tests, such as whether the 2020 presidential election was stolen and whether the January 6th attack on the Capitol was an insider job. Across the government, whole agencies are being eliminated and funding impounded in flagrant defiance of the Constitution. While these unvetted, uncleared, unqualified Doge bros burrow into some of our most classified information, jeopardizing not only our national security, but even if it's just not with malfeasance, but with just ignorance, were to reveal this information because they don't even know what's classified. We need leaders in the intelligence community and throughout government who are prepared to stand up to these short-sighted attempts to attack our workforce at the expense of our national security. Unfortunately, in my mind, Tulsi Gabbard is not that leader. This is someone who blamed NATO for the invasion of Ukraine, who defended Bashar al-Assad when he gassed his own people, who has defended Edward Snowden, someone who denied our country's trust and then ran off to China and Russia. And even after all those actions, after my Republican colleagues repeatedly begged her to call him out as a traitor, she demurred. The world today is more complex and more dangerous than ever before, and we need serious people with the right experience to help navigate this complex world. Ms. Gabbard is not such a nominee, and I implore again, not only my Democrats, but the Republicans who saw, particularly her performance at the hearing, to come to their senses and reject this nominee. With that,
Mark has a hearing. He reminded us he no longer sets the times when the hearing starts, so he has to go. Go ahead, Manu.
Given that you guys are criticizing Elon Musk pretty much every day, will you use the spending bill, the March 14th deadline, to try to rein him in?
Look, here's the bottom line. The Republicans are already shutting down good chunks of the government. Democrats don't want to shut down, but it's in Republicans' hands. It's up to them. Yes, yes.
Will you push for language in legislation to expressly protect USAID or CFPB?
As I said, the bottom line on this is that the Republicans are in charge, and we don't want to shut down, and it's up to them. But in terms of trying to get in the appropriations bills, undoing lots of the many things that they've done that are wrong, yes, we're certainly going to make an effort to do that. Yes.
I understand Democrats' concerns about going around the legislative branch or do what Mr. Musk is doing. But politically, have Democrats not tuned in to what the public is saying? They like the idea that the president is doing these cuts. Is that tone deaf politically, regardless of what you think of the operation?
Bottom line is simple. Everyone knows there's waste in government and should be cut, but DOGE is using a meat axe, and they're cutting things that are efficient and effective. I was in Albany and Syracuse on Monday talking at community health centers. Many of them have had their funds cut temporarily. Some even hasn't been restored yet. And they're the most efficient health care providers around. Take AID. Maybe there's some programs they don't like. But most people agree that PEPFAR was extremely effective and cost-effective. Most people would want to see us continue our fight in Central Africa against Ebola so it doesn't come here. And so the bottom line is very simple. Okay? If you want to make cuts, then you do it through a debate in Congress, not lawlessly by just implementing them. We want waste. We want to make sure waste isn't done. But they're cutting out the meat that's going to hurt millions of American families, tens of millions. And when they learn that, when veterans see they're not getting their benefits, when people on Medicaid see that they're getting cut, When all of these things happen, the American people are saying that's not what Donald Trump campaigned on. Nope, that lady over there. I always like to call you.
Okay, you have some Democratic senators saying that DOJ shouldn't be in the federal agencies. Then you have others like Senator Markey and House Democrats. They had a press conference today saying DOJ should be cutting the Pentagon budget. Are you guys all on the same page? And what can we do?
We are on the same page. It ought to be done through the Congress and lawfully, not by just an agency coming in and cutting. That's unlawful. The overwhelming majority of courts have said it's unlawful thus far, and that's how it ought to be done. We have rule of law, we have separation of powers. I've never seen it violated on such a massive scale, and that's why the courts are undoing lots of it in the temporary